Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Hot Mic for part 2 here today on Thursday on NRATV. We have as our guest today Laura Loomer, who I've gotten a chance to know at a couple of conservative conventions. Laura has done some remarkable work. Laura was one of the people Laura was the person who interrupted the Julius Caesar violence pornography, political porn, as she calls it, and stood up to make a stance. And we're talking to her today about this idea of whether or not we need to start fighting the left as unconventionally as they've been fighting us. So, Laura, you have in the past worked for Project Veritas. I don't think you're with them anymore, but you worked with them in the past. How do you feel being a part of an organization that scored such tremendous hits on just a horrible pit of mendacity and lies as CNN?
It's great. I mean, I'm honored. My first job pretty much, in college and right after college, was working for James O'Keefe as an undercover journalist. I worked undercover at Project Veritas for the past 3 years, and I just recently left 3 weeks ago to join Rebel Media. So it's great. You know, I was at Project Veritas during the time that they were conducting this investigation, and it's been great over the past few years talking with James and planning ways to take down the liberal mainstream media and just watching it actually happen, right? I mean, we saw even President Donald Trump was so blown away with the investigation that he mentioned it. He mentioned it on Twitter. They mentioned it during the White House press briefing. He embedded the videos on his Instagram. And it's an international news story. And he proved what everybody knew was happening, but there was no proof, right? So he's a hero.
There's proof now. This may be an odd question to ask you, but, was that fun? Was that fun to do, sitting around with O'Keefe and the rest of the people at Veritas, trying to figure out a way to get in here, trying to figure out a way to get what they wanted to get, and knowing full well, this is certainly my opinion, but I'll stand by it, that you're actually on the forces of honesty and truth and journalism and honor and a love of America? Did you guys have a good time occasionally? Because I know you take it very seriously. I'm not trying to say for a second that it was a lark, but was it ever fun?
Yeah. No, it was definitely fun, but by all means, it's definitely not a glamorous job at all, right? So you make a lot of sacrifices. You work very long hours. There were weeks when I worked 80-hour weeks, sometimes even more. And, it takes a lot of dedication. You have to make a lot of sacrifices with your family, with your social life. And it takes a really disciplined individual to work for a company like Project Veritas. But of course it's fun. And the most fulfilling part of it is actually watching policies change and watching people get held accountable. And when the investigation is finally complete, it's great. I mean, I remember being undercover in the Hillary Clinton campaign during the presidential elections. And, it was great whenever we caught them committing acts of fraud and corruption and just being able to expose them and show people, the light, right, to report the truth. So it's something that I'm very thankful I've had the opportunity to do. And it's definitely shaped me as a journalist.
Well, certainly it's important, but in many cases, if not most cases, it's also illegal. Do you personally worry about either criminal charges or civil suits against you?
For what in particular?
Just for undercover work, recording people without their permission, that kind of thing.
I don't really worry because everything that we do is legal, right? So we had a lot of lawyers when I was working at Project Veritas, and everything received a legal approval first by our lawyers. And we are always respectful of recording laws, and whether it's one-party consent or two-party consent. And, we make sure that everything that we do is completely legal, regardless of what the liberal mainstream media says. So, I don't really worry. I faced consequences in college. I was actually kicked out of my own university for doing a story with O'Keefe, and had a criminal complaint filed against me, which was later dropped because it was, completely irrelevant and there wasn't really cause behind the complaint. But it is a risk working there, but they do have a solid legal team that takes care of everything.
Well, that's just amazing. It's an amazing story, both of the stories, the Julius Caesar disruption and the work you did for Project Veritas and the work you're doing now at Rebel Media. Thank you so much for being with us today, Laura. I look forward to seeing you again soon out there around one of those campfires.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
My pleasure. Well, so this is the question now. It's effective. It really is effective. And is this the wave of the future? And what do you think about it? What do you personally think about it? I have come to a place where I have come to the realization, because I try to base everything I believe in on reality and evidence. And I'm the kind of guy that likes to fight fair. I'm the kind of guy that likes to have a military that, accepts the surrender of prisoners of war. And we saw that by the hundreds of thousands in the first Gulf War. There's simply good soldiers taking prisoners of war according to Geneva Convention and all the rest. Then we started running into Al-Qaeda and ISIS. And Al-Qaeda and ISIS start fighting, but they're not fighting in uniform. And if you haven't thought about it before, the whole idea of a soldier being in uniform is designed to protect the civilians, right? If you've got a traditional war going and you've got a guy in uniform, he's fair game. You can try to kill him, but because he's wearing a uniform and identifying himself as the enemy, he is protecting his civilians and therefore doing essentially the honorable thing and therefore worthy of the kind of treatment that would be offered to prisoners of war. But Al-Qaeda and ISIS are not only not wearing uniforms, they're doing everything possible to infiltrate our ranks. They're doing everything possible to hide behind women and children and use them as human shields. And they've done it many, many times, not just physically, but in terms of drone strikes and so on. And this kind of enemy is the kind of enemy that will use our decency against us. And if we do not understand that, then we're going to lose. And I don't see any shame in using the tactics of a dirty, underhanded fighter against them if it turns out that by trying to fight fair and by starting fighting fair, we simply just open ourselves up for more and more attacks. I think this kind of thing is the wave of the future. I know for a certain fact James O'Keefe is not going to rest James O'Keefe's not going to rest ever. He's just going to keep digging and digging and digging. And certainly the CNN tapes, and as I say, I think more are coming, are damning. They're insurmountable. CNN can deny all they want to that they're biased. They can deny it all they want to, and they do. They deny it on the air. They deny it in tweets and on emails and in print, all the rest of it. But when you see one and then two, and I'll bet you a few more, of these CNN journalists basically saying, oh, those ethical rules that we were supposed to learn in journalism, yeah, they're just adorable. And Van Jones saying, nah, it's a nothing burger, knowing full well that this whole story's a lie. Those are insurmountable evidence, insurmountable. And it's the most important work being done out there right now. I'm proud to know both Laura and James O'Keefe, and I'm proud to be doing this show as well. So thank you very much for joining us on Hot Mic. We will be back on Monday right here on NRATV, so we'll see you next time.